What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. I have the pleasure of talking with Aaron Blaise, the director of Snow Bear, an animated short that has been shortlisted for the Academy Award this year. Aaron, how are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. You've drawn so much of my childhood. I feel so
Yeah.
honored to just be with you for a few minutes here.
Well, it's an honor to be here. So thank you. Yeah, thanks for reaching out. This is great.
So, Snow Bear, this
Yeah.
film communicates so much emotionally in such a short amount of time without any dialogue.
Yeah.
How did you approach visual storytelling to make those emotional beats land so clearly?
Well, that's the thing, right? So it's you just kind of defined it. It's visual storytelling. So it's all told through expression. It's told by really stripping the story down to its most basic components. And it's interesting when you do things like that, stripping a story down and simplifying it. A lot of people think, well, you're making it simple, you're being lazy. By simplifying it, you're creating much more clarity, and you actually create more. What I feel is more complexity because people bring. What happens is people empathize with that character when you strip it down like that, and they bring their own experiences to the story, and all of a sudden it becomes much more complex and deeper. For me, I started out wanting to make to make a film about this lonely polar bear. I was going through some loneliness in my life, and I wanted to tell this character, the story about this character in the Arctic. As I dove deeper into it, I started really pushing the parallels with my own life. I had lost my wife to breast cancer in 2007. We had been married for 20 years, and I was devastated. And I really, it's watching someone, for lack of a better way of putting it, melt away that you love so much. It's a really hard thing to go through, and so I started to see those parallels. And after you lose somebody like that, you go through this, you feel like you're emotionally adrift, just like in the story. So everything in the story became metaphor. So, I really wanted to strip it down to these core beats that happened throughout my life. There was the happy times, the sad times of anticipating the loss, the time after the loss, and then getting your feet back under you. Those are the beats of the film, and that's what I stuck with.
And you go through this journey so beautifully. How did you go about I guess balancing them so that you wouldn't fall onto one extreme, or the other? How did you lock in
Yeah.
that emotional temperature?
Well, once again, you nailed the right word, and that's balance. And so, you know, I I think if you go into it telling a story about loss, it's going to get really heavy, and it's going to be a downer. And as much as I wanted to, I want my own story in there because it feels more real when you do that. But at
Right.
the same time, you want to entertain. I'm in the business of entertainment. And
Right.
so one of the things that we try to do, my experience at Disney, something I think Pixar does really well, is when you look at those films, you don't say, oh, that's a comedy, oh, that's a drama. No, they've got it all. It's got everything in there, and it's all balanced really well. And so even with a short film like Snow Bear, which is only 11 minutes long, I want people to laugh. I want them to cry. I want them to be on the edge of their seat. And so you try to strike a balance, and it's pacing. It's literally taking the audience on this kind of roller coaster ride. And at the end of it, you make them feel like, wow, that just flew by, and you just experienced all these emotions.
And it's true. And what was so beautiful about this is because this was, the return, the hand-drawn animation, which we don't get as
Yeah.
much. And so
Yeah.
that warmed my heart. And so now, one more thing talking about balance, it's the tones and the moods. But now, what would you say was your biggest challenge when you had to balance, right, the
Right.
visual beauty of the backdrops and the Arctic and make sure that we would still focus on that narrative clarity?
Well, that's it. So, the other thing too, that you mentioned the biggest challenge. I went into this with the intent of doing all of the visuals myself. My background before animation was illustration. I actually wanted to work for National Geographic. That was my drive in college. I went to school to become an illustrator. And along the way, I got an internship with Disney and discovered animation. And so I brought all of my painting and illustration career with me into my animation career. So when I, cut ahead 21 years after working at Disney and making this film, I decided I want to do the background paintings. I want to do the animation. I want to do the effects. I want to do the layout. I want to do all of it. And so that was the challenge, is how do I, even though it's only an 11-minute film, it's a lot of work, because I wanted it to be, that 90s, well, not just 90s, it goes all the way back to the 30s and 40s, that 24 frames per second Disney quality, the stuff that I did when I was there. That's the kind of animation I wanted to do. So to multiply that out, even for 11 minutes for one person, it's a lot of work. And so it really came down to scheduling, keeping my butt in the chair for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, getting those, making quotas, trying to hit those quotas in order to hit the deadlines in order to get it done. So it's that discipline to sit in your chair and do it.
And now you've worked across so many different formats in your career. What is it as a filmmaker? Do you feel that animation allows you to do that live action doesn't?
I love the fact that, and I've gotten to where with animation I can do this. I always talk to young artists that want to go into 2D animation, hand drawn animation. They say, what's the thing you need to be best at? It's quite literally, you have to be able to draw really well. And so drawing pictures, that's our language. And I always say, if you want to write poetry, you got to know the language really well. Well, if you want to animate, you've got to know that language, and that, so you can create that visual poetry. And so it's, just pushing through, and the better you can do, the better you can get at that, the better you are at being able to express that thing that you want to express. And so I'm kind of losing track of what I was saying, the direction of where I was going. But that, the better you can express yourself through those drawings, the better you can get, that story on the paper.
And I'm gonna help bring back. So my next question, you kind of already alluded to. You set me up so beautifully. Thank you.
Yeah.
You have a long history with animation, and now, so Snow Bear is the second project you've directed after the wonderful Brother Bear.
Thank you.
If you were to give advice to people looking to move into directing animated projects, what would you say has been one of your best practices that you want to take into your next project? And what
Yeah.
would you say is a learning curve that you try to avoid?
Um, Once again, just honing that skill. I'm 57 years old. I've been drawing my whole life. I'm still learning. And it's just always be willing to learn, always. And when I say learn, I mean honing those skills. I'm always going to get better. I've always got room to get better. And I got better as a result of creating this film. I was an okay animator before that. I had 21 years at Disney, and after making Snow Bear, I got even better. And I'm hoping that the next film I do, I'll get better after that. And so I think that's the biggest thing. And I just remembered when I got sidetracked on your last question. One of the things I love about hand drawn animation, and when I was talking about getting that visual poetry down, I love the ability. The thing that separates it from live action is that I can think of it and then just draw it. I can come up with an idea and I can sketch it out. And I literally have sat down and had an idea for a character moving across in a shot, or a character acting in some way, and it only lives here. That's the interesting thing. It only exists in these little neurons in your head. But then you can sit down and create, almost like Frankenstein, you can create this life. And that's what's really cool about hand-drawn animation.
Nice. And so, I think I have another minute, so I'm going to squeeze a quick one, and I wasn't planning on.
Sure.
But, given the beautiful idea, with Snow Bear looking for that companion, that loneliness, thinking
Yeah.
about the amazing characters that you've created and drawn over the years, who would you like to see Snow Bear be able to hang out on the snow mounds with?
Oh my gosh. It's funny, yeah, because I've had so many fun characters. I was one of the animators of the Beast, and I created Nala and It would be kind of fun to pull all some of those animal characters together and see them
Mhm.
together. You've got actually his name is Glenn. I named him after Glenn Keane, the polar bear. His name is
Oh,
Glenn. And then we
yep.
got Kadunala. I did Raja. Maybe the Beast in there too. It'd be kind of fun to see them together in a shot. Why not?
I think Glenn and Raja could have some fun.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
share similar traits.
I really do.
Well, I mean, I could talk about Disney and animation for hours, Baron, but I know I have to let you go in a moment. So let me just ask, as
Sure.
people are, when they come into this world, what are you hoping audiences carry away with them after they watch the film?
You know, First of all, I hope they're entertained. Even though it's a short film, I hope that it entertained them, that they laughed and cried and did all the things. I always like to say that I'm in the business of making people cry. I hope they felt the emotions. And then, at the it's also a statement on, the state of our environment and what's happening out there. And so hopefully maybe they're inspired to go and investigate, what's happening in the world and see if they can make a difference. So, but at the end of the day, I want them to be entertained.
Nice. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. Best of luck with the film's journey. It's such a delightful film. I watched it after watching something else that had put me in a darker place, so it pulled me right out of it. So I thank you for that.
Good. I'm
It's a
glad. Thank you.
beautiful, beautiful film.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye bye.